Hey everybody, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown, and I'm here with my normal co-host, Dr. Andrew Vallo, who it feels like I just haven't recorded with as much as I need to. Me and Andrew were talking, and he has a really good episode. I think there's a few metrics in dental we're always chasing. Of course, collections is the biggest one. A&R is one we're always chasing. But I think there's one that we're always chasing that people feel like on some level it's impossible to hit a certain number. And we're going to talk today about 100% reappointment rate. Now, that might sound like pie in the sky unachievable, but Andrew made some significant changes. And, I think I think anything in life is possible. So, Andrew, 100% reappointment rate.
This is going to be a really impactful episode, and I feel like I say that a lot, but I honestly, guys, I get excited as we roll out some of these new episodes for you guys as we get ready to record, because again, like, these are all things that I have went through in my own practices. These are improvements that we've made, and so I'm excited to like share this stuff with you guys. I really am. So. I'm going to preface this by saying we do not have 100% reappointment right now, so I don't want anyone to sit there and think like, oh my gosh, like how do they do that? But it is a goal. I mean, like we really are as a group working towards getting our reappointment to 100%. And we did have one office last quarter that was at 99%. So I mean, we're definitely showing that it's possible. So what I've realized over the last few years is that reappointment has been a constant struggle for us. Some of our hygienists seem to do better with it than others, and we do. I mean, we do leave it up to our hygiene team for the most part to get that reappointment done for their hygiene patients. We do have route slips. There is supposed to be a checks and balances and a second set of eyes where they can kind of catch them up front. But I'll be honest, no matter how much I honed in on that, it just didn't seem like it was getting the job done. And so, our rhetoric used to be, which I think is very common in dental, like, hey, we understand you don't know what your schedule is going to be like in 6 months, but we know our schedule, it gets very busy. If we don't reserve that time for you right now, there may not be anything available, or it may be that you only get like the worst, or the least desirable times or something like that. It's like, let's just go ahead and book it now. And so like that was the scripting I'd use. And again, I just think it was hygienist or team members dependent. Some did better with it than others. Some stayed on script, some got off script. I think there was some more ambiguity that was going on with it. And so, I mean, for a long time, I mean, our average reappointment across the board was upper 70s, low 80%. And last year, I think we really worked on it more, like it became more of a focal point. And I think a lot of our offices, started to get more into like the mid 80s. But again, we kind of plateaued there. So I think, across the board last year, most of our offices were kind of stuck for most of the year around, 82%, 84%, maybe 86%. And at that time I was like, man, I really want to get everyone, above 90% reappointment, because to Matt's point, and if you don't realize this, like, guys, your reappointment rate for your patients is one of, if not the most important KPI as far as the future success of your practice. So, I mean, think about it. You spend so much money, so much time, so much effort, marketing dollars, getting these patients in the door, and then you're just kind of letting them walk out without their next appointment scheduled. You're basically giving up this thing that you work so hard for, without much of a fight. So it is one of the most important things, and it is something that I've been focusing more and more on. So, during one of our executive team meetings, we kind of came up with this idea, and this is what we recently pivoted to. So we've been doing this for about the last 2 or 3 months now. It was this is February 2026. It was near the end of the year in 2025 we started doing this, and we're already seeing a dramatic improvement. And actually, I guess before I get to that, Matt, I'm gonna let you jump in. We're gonna save the climatic part here, but I want to let you talk a little more about reappointment and just kind of like what you see from other docs.
Yeah, so I don't run practices like you do, but I think looking at all the DI data and the stuff I see, I think what we have to understand about reappointment rate is it's very easy to be like, oh, we're at 82%. Oh, okay, whatever. Well, 82% this month, 82% next month, 82% next month. When that starts to become systemic, what happens is you look at the ripple effect down the road and you have a massive retention problem. Like you end up creating this black hole of losing patients that you can shut the door on. And I think it's really important to understand, like, hygiene drives production. We don't want less opportunity in hygiene. Hygiene reappointment rate is an early investment for a long-term return of having the right patients in hygiene and not creating a situation where a certain percentage of them is being recycled, right? And also when they don't get reappointed and they don't come back in, let's go back to this. Your job as a dentist is to do what's best for the patient all the time. What's best for the patient all the time is have hygiene reappointment to come in for their oral. So for their cleaning, right? We have to remove the fact that it's a business sales thing and refocus the fact that it is what we're doing best for the patient. And when staff members push back or they don't want to do things the way we say and they get off script, we have to reframe it on, well, do you care about the patient? Well, I do. Well, me as the owner, this is the best way to get them back to hygiene reappointment. That's why we're doing it this way. I think when you refocus, I think staff members see and hear it as like, oh, Andrew wants money. This is the salesy way to do it. No, this is the effective way to do it. Let's just focus on people in hygiene because that is our mission. I think when you refocus it that way, it changes a lot of things.
Well, yeah, I mean, guys, like think about it. In dentistry, this is one of the reasons why we've got a business model that is a little bit more forgiving, and why many dentists can still be, quite successful without running a tight ship, in terms of business standpoint. We're one of the few businesses that has this great reoccurring customer base model. I mean, hygiene, that's what it is. That's what hygiene reappointment is. It's reoccurring customer base. I mean, think about if you went to a restaurant and the restaurant's like, okay, before you leave, let's get your next reservation booked. Like, think about how amazing that would be for the restaurant industry to be, to be able to, but like that is commonplace in dentistry. Like that's like what is kind of expected. And if you're not taking advantage of, that reappointment model, you're really putting yourself at a major disadvantage. So I think that's one of the things. And honestly, like I've always known it was important. I remember, I'll give credit to Scott Luna. I remember going to the breakaway course, about 2 years before I opened my first startup. And that stuck with me. That was one of the pearls from that weekend that really stuck, was Scott talking about just how important reappointment was. And I think he was the one who had mentioned to me first, or I first heard like that it was one of the most, important, if not the most important KPIs as far as long-term practice success. So like before I even opened my first startup, I knew that hygiene reappointment was important. But again, like I think until you really get it, like I wasn't placing enough priority on it. I wasn't really tracking it. We had set up the system, and I think again from day one we had like the standard rhetoric, that our hygienists were using, the standard scripting. But again, it wasn't something I placed a lot of emphasis on. I wasn't holding office. I didn't even have I guess it was myself, but I wasn't holding, leadership team members accountable. I wasn't holding hygienists accountable. It's not like today, in today's terms, where we get these weekly hygiene KPIs with each hygienist and what their reappointment was, where we have our CHO who, talks to hygienists and talks to ones who are struggling with certain KPIs. Our office manager quarterly bonuses, a big chunk of that is the hygiene KPIs. So we ask our office managers to hold their hygienists accountable in things like hygiene reappointment. Even some of our leadership team members, have bonuses tied. So like our executive team members. So it is something that we've really put a lot of emphasis on, and we've got a lot more people that are held accountable to making sure that our patients are being reappointed. So I think that's definitely a big part of it as well. So, anyways, like what did we change to? I'm going to go ahead and kind of, get to that point, and we'll talk some more about it.
As you're talking through this, you're talking about hygiene reappointment rate and stuff. I think you're talking about the KPIs. Right before Andrew gets into how he changed things, I think there's some indicators here that docs have to read between the lines and look at. A lot of times docs are chasing the collections number, and there's a struggle there. And at least in our side, we'll start digging through DI and looking at stuff. And reappointment, generally we find there's collections problems. We also find there's a reappointment rate problem. There's also an average patient value problem. And generally they end up kind of becoming indicators like the canary in the coal mine of other systemic problems in the practice, one being overall patient experience, another end up being that we're just not being thorough and just letting people walk out the front. Like if you start looking at these things, they kind of end up grouping together. And Doc, as you're listening to this, just remember, as Andrew's talking about this as a KPI, just think about things in the mindset of every KPI is an indicator of a human behavior in the practice. We can chase these numbers, but if we're not modifying the behaviors and tracking the behaviors and creating a standard, then this stuff's never going to change. And generally, I find if you have a collection struggling, you end up having a reappointment problem, an average PT problem. And these things are coming from different indicators in the practice or different scenarios. One is really poor patient experience. And just honestly, I've watched this happen. Something as simple as this. The hygienist says, all right, you're done for the day. And the patient just walks out. Doesn't walk them up, doesn't bring, like I've watched that happen. Like if you, and that act right there means there's an overall cultural problem of standards and processes are not being met.
Well, and you know, I'll be honest too, man. I think for a lot of hygienists, like it's not in their nature to have conversations that they feel like are uncomfortable with their patients. You know, and I don't mean to stereotype, but like I'm just based on what I've seen over the years. And don't get me wrong, like hygienists are great people. They're very empathetic. You know, they really, really care a lot about their patients. But most hygienists would not make great treatment coordinators for that sole fact. Like I have seen this. And honestly, again, like I'm not trying to throw hygienists under the bus. Most dentists would not make good treatment coordinators. I would not make a good treatment coordinator. I don't love having those
horrible treatment coordinators. No. You guys can't listen. You guys can't talk about $5 without getting scared. Okay, right. Dentists cannot talk about money universally.
Well, and it's something. I mean, you can get
you guys
better
are trained
at
for it.
It's something I've worked on. You know, I when I was a newly minted dentist, I was more uncomfortable sometimes telling patients, you know, that they had a cavity or whatever. So it's like it's something we can work to get past, and obviously I got past that and got a lot better at. You know, I got to the point where I just basically, you know, figured out like it was my responsibility to tell the patients everything I saw. And so it was a little bit of a mindset shift for me, but I do remember those early days and feeling uncomfortable having some of those uncomfortable conversations. And I think a lot of hygienists feel the same way. And I think with that reappointment thing, I don't think for most hygienists, I don't think that they mind having the initial conversation, but it's like, as soon as they start to get some pushback, they shut down. Like they don't want to keep going down that road. They're like, okay, yep, no problem. Give us a call, you know, like whatever it is. And it's like, that's when we've tried to train our hygienists on. And so, man, this is kind of fun. I hope I kind of have you guys on the edge of your seat a little bit. This wasn't intentional, guys. I'll be honest. I'm battling some kind of like flu-like thing. I think I've got a little bit of a fever. I'm a little bit delirious. So like I came into today's and you know, I'm still here because I love you guys. And because Matt and my schedules are just so difficult to coordinate that this wasn't going to happen if we rescheduled it. But I'll be honest, my thoughts aren't as organized as they normally are. So I'm just kind of spitballing right now. But I mean everything I say. I think this is some really good content, and I really am going to bring out that awesome new scripting that we have in just 1 minute. I have one more thing that I thought that I wanted to say before I get to it.
One more thing. Order today. You get good.
So if you guys listen to the episode we had with Matt and I and Kelly Schwartz, there was one major thing that Kelly and I really disagreed on. And it was a friendly disagreement, but it's something I wanted to bring up at this point too. Because Kelly had mentioned that he's not a big fan of the reappointment model. He doesn't like to clog up hygiene with existing patients, and especially if the patient, you know, doesn't want to schedule, because then they're not going to show up. And so I disagree. And we kind of had a little bit of a conversation about how if your practice is not at capacity, you know, it's a startup, it's a growing practice, then, you know, it makes even more sense to make sure you're trying to reappoint as close to 100% as possible. And if you've got a mature practice busting at the seams, then maybe it's not as critical that your reappointment's up there. I wanted to mention that in my mind, in my opinion, even in that second scenario where your practice is busting at the seams, I personally would still like to see a reappointment close to 100%. And what I would suggest is do something to increase capacity or potentially decrease demand. So, you know, if you've got a practice busting at the seams and you've got the ability to, Let's add more treatment rooms. Let's add more providers, add more hygienists, potentially even grow out to a new space. If none of those things are an option or, not realistic and you're taking insurances, let's start cutting insurances. So in my mind, until you are truly 100% maxed out, meaning you're completely fee for service, there's no opportunity to add more treatment rooms, more team members, go to split shifts, add more days, whatever it is. I personally still believe you should be trying to reappoint as close to 100% as possible. So I wanted to mention that because I know we've got different listeners in different parts of their practice, and some of you guys may remember that. And it's all respect to Kelly. I mean, he is a incredible mind within the dental space, but maybe just different approaches to, a similar subject. That's my take. This is unfiltered. I wanted to make sure I gave you guys my take on the situation. No matter where you're at, I believe you should be trying to reappoint as close to 100% as possible. So
I agree.
Okay.
I co-sign for that.
Yeah. Okay. So Matt's on the same page here. So now that that's out of the way, guys, this is what we changed. And this is how we, greatly increased. So our reappointment over the last quarter, I had said last year, for the most part, it was kind of, low mid 80s, 82, 85%, somewhere in that threshold. The last quarter of 2025, and we made this switch sometime during that quarter with this new scripting. I believe across the board for the organization, our reappointment rate was about 92 or 93%. So we made a big jump. And again, we're not where we want to get to, but we're getting a lot closer. How we change that scripting. When our hygiene team goes to reappoint their patient and the patient, gives any kind of pushback, rather than going through the old scripting of, hey, we know you don't know your schedule, however, blah, blah, blah. What we say now is like, hey, we get it. But just so you know, our system, if we don't manually schedule your next appointment, it will automatically schedule that appointment for you. And it will just pick a random day and time that's available about 6 months from now. So, knowing that, wouldn't you rather try to pick the day and time that you think work best for you, rather than just getting assigned a random time? And so that's the new scripting. And so basically now it's very black and white. And as long as our hygienists are actually sticking to that scripting, it works. I mean, as evidenced by, we're still working with some hygienists because they're not always going to it 100% of the time. So it's like that thing where you've got to be chief repeating officer, you've got to role play, you've got to do it over and over again. And hygienists whose numbers are still lower, they're the ones who seem to be struggling some with the new scripting. But we found, once they use that scripting, almost every single patient is like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Like, let's go ahead. Let's pick a day. Or the hygienist will sometimes say, do you like, this was a Tuesday morning. Would another Tuesday morning around this time work best for you? That type of a thing. Sometimes patients even say, you know what, that's fine. Just have it pick a random time for me. If I need to change it, I will, like that type of a thing. And that's totally fine too. So, the nice thing is the hygienists get to take kind of that responsibility off themselves, where it's like, hey, now they don't feel like they're necessarily putting the pressure on the patient. It's just like, this is our system. Either we pick an appointment for you or it is going to automatically pick an appointment for you. So we came up with this during a leadership meeting, and guys, if you're not doing leadership meetings on a regular basis, I'd highly recommend it. The makeup of your leadership meeting is going to vary depending on the size of your office or offices. For us, it's our executive team, it's our CFO, our COO, our CSO, our regional manager, myself, I'm the CEO. But like we meet every Friday. I'm not even at all of the meetings. A lot of times the team gets stuff done without me there if there's a reason I can't make it. But I try to be there as much as I can. We come up with some really great ideas. So again, this was one of those ideas where we're talking about reappointment and kind of where things are at. And our chief hygiene officer is there. And actually, I don't remember for sure who came up with this idea. I actually don't think it was me. It might have been. I don't remember. But I get so many great ideas from the team as well. So someone came up with this idea. We talked about it. We said, hey, I think this is going to work. And we just went with it. And we've had almost no pushback. And our reappointment rate went from the low to mid 80s up to the low to mid 90s. And it's growing. So, we have set goals for all the offices that by the end of 26, we want the average to be 95% plus. And I told them, like, truthfully, I really want it to be 98% plus. And so, what we've told our teams is like, there's basically two reasons not to reappoint a patient. With this scripting, if the patient says, well, that's fine, it can schedule an appointment for me, but I'm moving out of state next week. Okay. It probably doesn't make sense to reappoint that patient if they are actually moving out of state, because we know they're not going to drive across state lines to come get their cleaning done. And I told them the other reason would be the patient says they're going to prison. Other than those two reasons, I said there's not a valid excuse for not reappointing that patient. I don't care if they're so busy starting a new job, whatever it is, just tell them, hey, that's fine. It's going to pick an appointment for you. You'll get plenty of notice. If you need to make a change, we request 48 hours, notice. So you'll have plenty of notice before that 48-hour window. Just let us know. We'll do our best to find another appointment that works for you. Just keep in mind, again, that our appointments fill quickly. So, if maybe you want to try to pick a day and time now that you think is going to work best, because if we just pick one for you, or if the system picks one for you and you call us 3 days before your appointment, there's probably not going to be a lot available. So we really do make that push to get the patients to pick their day and time. I think there's more commitment at that point in time than if we just randomly assign them an appointment. But at the end of the day, I told my teams, I would rather you pick a random day and time and schedule that patient than them leave without an appointment scheduled. Because once they leave without an appointment scheduled, it's so much harder to get that hygiene appointment on the books. So.
Once they're not in front of you, you're not doing it. Doc, understand, even everyone has some level of dental anxiety. Everyone has a busy life. It's out of sight, out of mind. When you start piling those things on top of them, you have like a 97% chance you're not getting that person back if you don't reappoint them. You're not.
And think about this, guys. Obviously, I've built this group on the back of some great marketing, and I invest a lot in marketing. Anyone who's listened to a lot of this podcast knows I'm probably top 1 percentile as far as how much I invest in marketing, and it's probably on par with some of the DSOs and what they're spending. There's some I know that still spend way more than I do, and I think they're not very efficient with their marketing dollars. But that's a whole nother story. Man, yeah. If I was spending $35K a month per office, we'd
listen. That's a podcast episode.
Yeah.
You need to write that down.
True. I actually, funny enough, man, there are days where I think I'm not doing enough. You talk to people. I listen to Hermosi's podcast and about his book launch, and I'm like, man, I felt like I went so far and beyond what most dentists spend on marketing. And I kind of got comfortable, but honestly, I think there's still room for me to spend even more than I do. And there's times where I think about that. So but you're right. That's a whole other pot. But my point of all this was I wasn't doing that good of a job reappointing our patients. I was probably close to industry average, for a long time. And it's only recently that I've really shifted the focus, and we came up with this new scripting, and finally we're seeing our numbers, more where they should be, and I'm not saying most dentists are at 95% because I don't think they are. I honestly don't know what the stat is for the average. But I would guess most dentists are probably 80%, 75%, somewhere in that range, maybe 85. So, imagine if I had put this much focus a couple of years ago and changed our scripting, and we've been doing, 95% plus for the last couple of years. I either wouldn't have to spend as much on marketing, or our practices would be that much bigger. Maybe we'd even have more practices. So that is that snowball effect where you start increasing that reappointment number early and you stay on top of it. Your practices are just going to grow organically so much faster because you're retaining patients. You're keeping hygiene full. You're having the need to add more hygienists sooner. You're having the need to add more associate doctors sooner. So I'm excited about this. I think this is going to have one of the most significant impacts on our group in the coming years, is the fact that we've finally made reappointments such a big focal point. And I'll tell you what, it's something that I'm going to continue to hold our teams accountable for. So, every single quarter, every single month, hygienists, The hygienist that has the highest reappointment rate wins an extra bonus every single month. So I mean, like, there are a lot of reasons. A lot of people are motivated to really make the system work. So
as we wrap this up, it's funny. I was on a meeting yesterday with I'm just gonna say his name is Dr. Chris, and he's in Orlando, and we spent time yesterday. He got on my calendar. He snuck onto my calendar. Didn't go through my assistant or his account manager, and he came to me like, "Hey man, I want to grow more." And we actually went through this exact conversation. We looked at hygiene, reappointment rate, all these other things. Listen, dude, I can sell you more marketing products, but you have these 3 holes. If you close these holes up, it actually gets you to where you need to be. Guys, you always want to look at marketing for growth. You associate marketing as your growth avenue. There are multiple profit centers inside the practice. And one big one is hygiene drives production, hygiene reappointment rate. Another one me and him talked about was he was an Invisalign doc and he wasn't scanning everybody. Like, there's these spots right in front of you. You have this giant patient base, and you're like, I want to grow, but are you really getting everything out of your patient base you should be? And chances are you're not, right? So like Doc said, like, this is a great place to grow. So,
hey Matt, I want to talk about one last thing before we wrap this episode up. So guys, the basically this entire episode so far, I've been talking about hygiene reappointment. And so, if you're not aware, hygiene reappointment essentially means what percent of your patients that were in hygiene for a hygiene visit, that it wasn't their first time at your office, got pre-appointed while they're at the office for their next hygiene visit. That's what hygiene reappointment, pre-appointment rate means. We use Dental Intel to track that. There's a lot of different services that will tell you, spit out that data.
Yeah, Dental Hill's not a bad one. It's probably one of the premier ones for that stuff.
There's another metric called new patient reappointment. This is also now a focal point for my group. So, all those numbers we talked about for hygiene reappointment, our new patient reappointment is probably near the bottom of the dental industry average. And the reason for that is because we have this free consult model, and we spend a lot of marketing dollars to get a lot of free consults. And we were not. So, okay. So for new patient reappointment, that is what percentage of the people who it was their first time at your office get scheduled for their next hygiene visit. And I believe that includes patients who it's their first time at the office and they're doing a hygiene visit that same day. But basically, if they're a new patient, this is their first time visiting, were they or were they not scheduled for their next hygiene visit while they were there? And so, and you can kind of break it up because you can see by provider. And so like for new patients, you'd see our hygienists, new patient reappointment might be 65% or 70% or what. You're going to see a lower number there than you do for hygiene. I still think it should be higher. I think it should be at least maybe 80%. But there is a bigger barrier, I think, for new patients to get them to come back, especially if they're there for a special free whitening, whatever it is. But when it would break it down, you'd see the doctor reappointment for new patients. And a lot of times that number would be like 10%, 8%, 12%. And the reason for that is we're seeing all these consults, Invisalign, smile makeover, veneers, implants. And I realized while we had been missing an opportunity for hygiene reappointment, and again, it's already making a difference, we're missing an even bigger opportunity for new patient reappointment. And the whole point of it is most of these new patients were not seeing hygiene. They were seeing, assistants who we weren't really talking to about reappointment. We weren't really training on it. They're seeing the doctor. We don't talk to or train on that. They're there for a specific thing, and maybe they even have another dentist. So we started coming up with different ways to incentivize those new patient consults who came in for a free consult to come back for their dental cleaning visit. One of those ways is as you guys are probably aware, we do our free dental giveaways. So we give away at the implant offices, we give away free dental implants. Basically, it's a $3,800 office credit they can use towards essentially any dental treatment. They get raffle tickets for different things. It used to be they had to start some phase of treatment to get raffle tickets. Now we'll give raffle tickets for a whole bunch of different things. So that way they can enter the contest without even potentially starting any treatment. One of those things is coming back for their cleaning, which, I guess technically is preventative treatment. But that is one of the ways where they're coming in for their free consult. A lot of times they've heard about our free giveaway. They're interested in earning raffle tickets. And we tell them, hey, schedule your cleaning visit and you'll get a raffle ticket just for doing that. Even if you don't, or even if you're not ready to start more serious treatment right now, like give us a chance, like get fully established, give us a chance to show you, what we're about. I told the team, even if it's a denture patient, like let's say they're in there with already having full dentures and maybe they're thinking about getting implants, or maybe they just want new dentures and they weren't ready to pull the trigger on it yet. They still should be having those prostheses cleaned. They still should be having an oral cancer screening done at least once a year. They still can come into hygiene. And how easy is that hygiene visit? That's a 30-minute appointment where, we're using the ultrasonic to professionally clean their prosthesis, and maybe we're doing a bio screening on them. And so we came up with a package specifically for those denture wearing patients. I want to say it's like $64, and it includes the professional ultrasonic cleaning of their dentures, and it includes a bio screening, advanced oral cancer screening. So I said they should come in at least once a year. I think they should come in at least twice a year, but at the very least once a year to have their denture professionally cleaned and have that oral cancer screening done. And at $64, it's such a low barrier to entry, and they're going to get a raffle ticket. So we were looking at this issue and we're like, man, yes, we started to focus on the existing patients in hygiene and getting them back. And we've already made big strides there. And there still is, going from 92% to 98%, that's going to make a huge difference. But imagine, again, so when you average the hygienists and the doctors, a lot of these offices, new patient reappointments, like 40%, 30%. So imagine what going from 30% to 70% is going to do. More than double, the number of hygiene visits we're getting from those consults. That is huge. So that is kind of our newest focal point on reappointment. And again, dental intel, look at hygiene reappointment, look at new patient reappointment. If you do a model like mine where you do a lot of free consults, I can almost guarantee you're not doing a great job reappointing those free consults for hygiene visits. Start thinking about these things. And then we told the team they can tell the patient the same thing that they're telling the existing hygiene patients, is that, hey, if you don't pick a day and time, the system will automatically schedule one. And so what? A lot of those patients may not show up for it. That's why we have unconfirmed columns. That's why we have all these processes in place. But at least they're getting on the schedule, and at least they're getting, reminders and texts and all that about it. And, we're giving them the opportunity to come in for their next hygiene visit versus they walk out the door. You're probably never seeing that patient again. The last thing I'm going to mention about this, I know we got to wrap this up because we got a few more episodes to get through today, but the last thing I'm going to say is, someone had mentioned to me, because I was talking to other dentists about this, and they're like, yeah, but do you really want your hygiene clogged up with these denture patients, where you're doing a $64 special and all that stuff? And I said, okay, well, first of all, again, unless you're so busy, packed to the gills, you have no openings in hygiene, yes, I would rather have a $64 patient where my hygienist just has to dunk their dentures in an ultrasonic and do a quick bio screening than nothing in the chair. And if you're like me and you're in network with Delta Dental, what does Delta Dental pay for a prophy? Especially if there's no x-rays due. Next to nothing.
You lose money on the hygiene hour?
So yes, I would rather have that $64, quick denture cleaning in there. But let's take it a step further. What happens every time you get another one of these denture patients to come back in through hygiene? You get another opportunity to talk to them about dental implants and how, hey, how's things going with the denture? How have you been able to eat recently? Have you given any more thought to dental implants? Hey, we've actually got a special going right now this summer for dental implants. We can actually give you better pricing than before. So imagine if you convert 50 over the course of the year, you convert 50 of these quote unquote denture cleanings from these consults. And imagine if you have 5% of those 50 convert to full implants. Do you want those implant patients in your hygiene, or those denture patients in your hygiene? I do. I don't know about you, Matt, but I definitely do. So
I think docs get we have to wrap it up here, but real quick, I went through this similar thing one time talking to a doc about denture patients and hygiene and stuff. And I think people get fixated on dollars and production. And I think there's a broader thought here. Humans in the chair are going to equal treatment. Okay. Just end of story, right? The more humans flowing through the practice, let's say that denture patient just gets that cleaning, you know what? And then they're talking to their friend who's thinking about getting dentures. and they're at, they're playing pickleball, and they're like, oh, well, I went to a denture place. They didn't tell me anything about cleanings. Well, my guy does it every 6 months for me. Well, maybe I'll go there and get my snap-ins done. And then they come in, they think they need dentures, and you guys show them that they need a couple implant supported partials and a couple other individual implants, and there's not reason to go to dentures because they don't know, because they have no dental IQ. Humans in the chair equal more humans in the practice equals more production. Stop overthinking it.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Matt. I think in general, we dentists tend to overthink things, and we tend to worry about, what is quote unquote profitable in the moment or not profitable in the moment. But and that's been my mentality the whole time. More patients in the office is going to lead to more practice growth. It's going to lead to more revenue, more production. And I don't think about every single little one-off. I don't think about the money that I'm losing on that quote unquote free consultation. And I'll tell you what, I'm losing a lot less money if we actually get that patient back for a hygiene visit, even if they don't start their big ticket treatment that they were there for. So yeah, I was gonna say good episode, man. I hope you guys found this helpful. This is again biased. I think all of our episodes have important information. I think this is one of the more important episodes, because reappointment is such a big deal, and so many of us, like me, are not or we're not doing a very good job with it. So, I hope you took notes. Go back and listen. This is something you can very easily implement in your practice today or tomorrow with your team. Change the scripting, hold people accountable, use it as one of the metrics that you're tying bonuses and incentives in that to. If you have an office manager, make hygiene reappointment one of the metrics that's tied to their quarterly or monthly, however you do bonuses. You'll start to notice a difference in your practice very quickly. So,
yeah. Hey guys, this was a great episode. Me and Dr. Vallo do not take money for this. There's no sponsors. There's no pay to play. The best way you can thank us is hit like, subscribe, share, and please leave a review. We read the reviews. Okay. Please leave a review. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great day.